So boom, we're recording. So Sophia, thank you for reminding me of that. So we are recording now, and Rick is going to throw in the bit.ly short address to today's presentation, and we are recording. So, hey, welcome to today's session. We're talking about, let's go back to our title. We're talking about making Canvas or make Canvas outcomes work for you. Rick and I have done an awful lot of work on this together. Rick's done a ton of work on his own. I just want to introduce myself. My name is Chris. I have the opportunity to be the Canvas administrator, Canvas admin for Beaverton School District. I've been a classroom teacher for 17 years and been in education for, this is my 24th year, I think. And then Rick, go ahead, my friend.
Yeah, hi, I'm Rick Bush, and I'm the technology teacher at Stoller in Beaverton, Stoller Middle School, and I'm one of the Canvas people in my building. So
Canvas facilitator, because it's a really important
Canvas
name.
Facilitator. There you go.
Yeah, and Rick is he does a fantastic job of it. He's always trying something, and we're always talking about, well, how's this going to work? What's going on? And so Rick and I have known each other 4 or 5 years, right? I mean, since I got here, I think it's when we started to work together and stuff. So really fortunate that we've had a chance to basically, create a good friendship over Canvas and over other things too. So. So today we're talking about learning outcomes in Canvas. I don't want to pretend that earlier session I pretended, I think I made the mistake that I assume everybody who's here knows Canvas, and yes, the pandemic has brought that on for many folks, but it doesn't mean we're all at the same level. So I don't want to pretend that everybody knows an outcome and everybody knows all the things we do. So please feel free to interrupt, to ask a question. Rick and I will do our best to basically share this information in a helpful way, but please feel free to answer questions or even connect with Rick and I afterwards. Just a quick thumbs up. How many of you are in Portland Public School? If you could just give me a quick thumbs up on your screen, that would be killer. You can do emoji if you want to. Okay, cool. We got a few. All right, and okay, good. Is there anybody who's from a different school district? If you are, you can just type it in. The reason why I asked is because what we're talking about today, every school district can embark on this journey. It doesn't mean you're already starting the journey, or I don't know where you are in the journey. So, okay, Roseburg, okay, beautiful, thank you. So I say that too because we're gonna share where we're at, we'll share how we're doing things, and then the future perspective of where we're trying to move things. Orange County Public School, what? Out of Florida? So oh gosh. All right, I don't want to name drop, but okay. So let's get started with what are outcomes. Basically, in our school district in Beaverton, we call them targets. Some districts call them standards. So if you just take Canvas and just push it off aside for just a moment, just talk about standards, right? What is it that my students are learning? And then how am I assessing them on the learning? That would be a target or a standard. Canvas uses the terminology outcome. And so that's one of the reasons why when Rick and I work on this process, there's some different terminology being used between outcomes and Canvas, standards, and targets. So just to kind of lay down the groundwork, an outcome is simply a target or a standard that your district may be using. Now, if you're not a standards-based grading and reporting district, maybe you just use standards to teach to, but you don't assess students, that's a little bit different. We in our district, we do our best to do the standards-based grading and reporting. In other words, we teach to the standards and then we assess on those, and then we give a score and a value and feedback based off of that. So, and then of course, why outcomes? I don't want to pretend that, not trying to explain it in a way that you're like, Chris, we already know outcomes, but just why outcomes, real simply a way to basically measure where students are according to the target you're trying to measure them on, and then also to support proficiency-based grading. So. And then Canvas outcomes, where are they located at, Chris? Well, on every single course on the left-hand side, you click on outcomes. Now in our school district, our teachers don't have the outcomes already there, but Rick and I are going to show you briefly how we are moving towards the actual ultimate goal of putting all outcomes for our district teachers in Canvas. So that's what we'll talk about in a few minutes. But for the moment, you might be in a district where you may already have those. I don't know. And if you don't, the left-hand side, click outcomes, and that's basically the quickest way to get to that. Okay. And like I said, we're going to talk about outcomes. If you feel like, oh my gosh, I have a question, feel free to just boom, throw it out there in the chat, or just voice it. Rick and I would be happy to answer. This is a video. I'm not going to hit play, but the slide deck that Rick has shared, the link to outcomes is here. So I'm not going to show the video or play the video, but you can kind of just give an overview of what that looks like. I'll be honest and transparent up front. Canvas is not a standards-based grading gradebook. It's not designed to be standards-based grading report card. That's just what it is. However, Canvas allows some flexibility to capture evidence towards targets, outcomes, and to be able to kind of, I don't want to say report on them, but give you a summative judgment or an idea of how students are doing that. So just in full transparency, Canvas is not a standards-based gradebook. Okay, so just to kind of let people know that up front. Rick and I talked about the other day, why? So if you know what a target is, your standard, and you know, therefore it's an outcome, it's the same thing, different terminology. Why should I care? Why should I use them? And Rick and I talk about this all the time, and he's going to tell you his big why, but my big why is just simply the teacher efficiency. Hopefully it's just a click away. Transparency, students know what is expected, and teachers give scoring based off of what's expected. And then I'm hoping it'll empower our students and learners. Rick, I want you to totally share real quick.
So yeah, totally. Yeah, I can jump in and just say, like, my big reason for doing this is that, I mean, this is 2021, and I want to be able to like grade something, like, or look at a student project and then score it on that standard, and then have that standard rostered in the gradebook. And that's exactly what I want. I want to make my work fast. And because in my opinion, there's, and I'll be doing a little bit of a presentation on this in the next hour, but like there's two big things that we can help do to help students grow as teachers. Like the first one is create meaningful relationships, and then second one is giving them feedback, right? And if you can give them feedback on that standard quickly, you can get to the first one really, like, and spend much more time on that.
Yeah, remember
so
the days.
That's my big why.
Remember the days, like, and I did it, took home papers, right? Because we didn't, everything was paper pencil. So there's nothing wrong with that again, but Canvas allows my students to submit work digitally. Hopefully I can give feedback digitally, and I'm carrying home less stuff, but the feedback is not less. The feedback is actually probably more robust, or potentially even more engaging, because you could give it back faster. Rick hit on something that I think is really valuable. How good is feedback a month later? Or 3 weeks later?
Exactly.
It's really not at the best. And it's a struggle for a teacher. I mean, I'm not going to pretend that a teacher's like, oh, feedback is so easy. It's not. You've got 140 students, 160 students. Rick had, would you have like last year, 400, dude?
I had 420.
Yeah, 420. So
this year I had 220.
So for a month, that's pretty possible for him because it might have taken a month to get through 400. But I'm telling you, in his session later on today, he's going to talk about how he really leveraged the power of outcomes and SpeedGrader to do that. So anyway, so let's go on. Again, just real quickly, it's only a 30-minute session. We're happy to hang out for a little bit, and Rick and I can chat a little bit, and then he is having another session later on today. But as far as the outcomes, once I have my outcomes in Canvas, and you're like, well, Chris, wait, how do you load those? Give us a second, we'll show you how to do that. But as far as once I load my target, a Canvas outcome in Canvas, then I can attach that to an assignment. One outcome or one target to an assignment. And then what you're looking at is SpeedGrader. Now a student has submitted their work. I can open up SpeedGrader and I can click on the right-hand side where it says rubric, and I can go, you got a 3 or you've got a 4 based on the criteria of what that 3 or 4 is. And then Canvas will just simply assign that student that value. You can give a point value if you want, but you don't have to. Canvas is flexible enough to say, doesn't count towards the grade. And even when you do use outcomes, maybe don't use points, just give the actual verbiage, the feedback. So Canvas has some flexibility for you as a teacher to say, let's just pretend this is just strictly formative. I don't want my students focus on the point score, but more about the feedback. That's the flexibility of Canvas. If you do want more of a summative, like, hey, I really want this assignment to come through as a score, you can do that as well. And then this is Rick's picture of him using an iPad. So Canvas outcomes is not just about using your computer. He'll talk about it in his session later on. It is using the power of SpeedGrader and even an iPad, being able to annotate and write on students' work. As far as the transparency, again, going back to Canvas outcomes, my good friend Alana says it really well. When the assignment comes to a student, if that's the first time that student's seen the rubric, we're doing it wrong. So in Rick's case, and he can definitely share it, this is Rick's. He's got the outcome visible to students in the assignment, and then when they actually go do the assignment, students will see it as well. So in other words, it's not a surprise. It shouldn't be a got you. It should be transparency, and that's the goal of that.
For sure, yeah, and I'll answer a question just a second, then chat. But yeah, that rubric, putting it right at the bottom of the assignment. I put the rubric on every single assignment. We can show that template later. But yeah, but it's it makes it a little bit easier to, for students to be able to see it right before they turn something in.
Yeah, totally. So once your outcomes are in Canvas and you create an assignment and you attach an outcome to it, you have two ways of looking at it. This is what's called Mastery Gradebook, which is as close to as standards-based grading as you would get in Canvas. And basically Canvas says, listen, here's the targets that the outcomes you want to assess your students on individually. So therefore, what does that look like? And so this will give you more of a summative judgment. If you've given your students 3 or 4 tasks, and you want to measure them on the same target, it will show up. And this is Rick's Gradebook. We grade out his students so that you can't see it, but it gives an opportunity for you as a teacher to say, I've given you a few examples to work on against this target. How are you doing overall? And then the goal, because we right now currently in our school district, we don't have a push a button that says send scores from Canvas to Synergy, which is our SIS. We are working towards that. But right now, the best we have is how are students doing in Canvas, the learning, how is the evidence of learning, what does it look like? And then can I put a summative judgment or a final in Synergy, and that would be supported. And so using the outcomes and using these in Canvas is one way of supporting that move. All right. And then of course, can students look at outcomes? Yeah, the answer is yes. They can actually go to the gradebook and they can switch between assignment view, just like a teacher can, to learning mastery. And so they can see, how am I doing against an assignment? And it can even tell me if I mastered it or not. And you as a classroom teacher could technically set the level of mastery. Some districts are a 1 to 4. We are. Some districts are a 1 to 8. MYP is a 1 to 8. So as a district, you can set what you consider is the mastery level. In our district, like I said, it happens to be a 4. All right. And then we mentioned a few minutes ago, oh, it sounds like you have 2 different grade books. Well, we have what's called an assignment view, like the traditional grade book. Students are submitting work. How did you do the assignment? I can even view feedback that way, or I can flip it to what's considered to be learning mastery, which basically changes it to assignment focus to target focus. I want to look at how you're doing against a target or against an outcome specifically. So I just want to pause. Are there any questions? Any comments? I know Rick said he was going to answer questions. And again, I don't want to pretend that all of you right now are on the journey of got outcomes done and you figured it out. It's just, we're going to share what we're doing and we'll show you how to get those outcomes into Canvas as well. So
yeah, real quick, somebody was saying like, oh my gosh, for students to be able to find the feedback, it is such a crazy process to find it.
Yeah, it's a struggle.
So what I did is I actually created a video series or a video to remind students on how to find it. But I'm going to put this in the chat. This is a playlist. Actually, it's my whole Canvas series playlist for students. Another colleague of mine and I, we created this series at the beginning of last year, so that students, so the teachers had this ready to go for when students needed to know how to do these particular things. So check that YouTube playlist out. Yeah, it's pretty good.
So as far as like, go back to the beginning, like, okay, Chris, I don't have my outcomes yet. They're coming. Okay, we'll put them in. But once you do have your outcomes in Canvas, adding an outcome to an assignment is simply as simple as creating the assignment, saving it, and then you'll see it on the bottom of this picture, clicking the plus rubric. And once you click the plus rubric, it's actually going to let you go ahead and choose an outcome. So you'll click find outcome. And then you'll be able to basically choose which one you want. And you can have more than one. You can have 2 or 3 different outcomes assigned to an assignment, because basically you're trying to evaluate how a student's doing against that target. Maybe this assignment is worth 3 outcomes or 3 targets or 3 standards. And so you want to assess that student, and you can. And the beauty of that is when you do that, Canvas will say, okay, great. You can go ahead and attach more than one outcome to an assignment. And then you'll see right here in the red box, this is just an example of just one of those outcomes, create text. We use, again, this 4-point scale, and I just want to briefly talk about this. you'll see where it says 4 points consistency, 3 points often. You can add criteria. You can add like, what does consistent mean? You're allowed to do that. But the challenge is the more information you add to these little boxes, the larger your rubric eventually becomes, and it's a little more unwieldy, a little more challenging. So what we do is just put the title of that criteria, why you got a 4, a 3, or 2, or a 1, and then allow students to be able to read that information either through the teacher's syllabus. They have that hosted there on the syllabus or on our website, but we don't want to hide it. We just don't want to have to put all that language in here because it makes the rubric look uncomfortable and kind of unwieldy and unattractive, to be honest. So
yeah, and I like to put mine, like I said, you can see this right here. I put mine like right at the bottom of the assignment. And I think, did we keep the code in there? Yeah,
totally.
So I think it's the next slide right there. That's the template for the HTML, and then you can go back to the other slide.
There you go.
The other way. There you go. So like then the colors will show up. We can debate back and forth on the colors, but that's the way they show up in other stuff for our district. But yeah, and one of the things I like to do is I like that our targets have a lot more teacher language, and I make them more specific to to the students and for the particular assignment. In a normal year, like what I actually do is I actually construct that with the kids, and then I write that information into the assignment. But yeah, and the reason why I do that is because, in this particular, middle school, we're scaffolding the experience for kids. So instead of just kind of like having them interpret it on their own, that's more like a high school task.
Sophia, you ask, how do outcomes and gradebook work together? Is it one or the other? Or, and I have some rubrics for assignments. So basically in Canvas, you have two things. Like you have basically, I'll go back to this. You have a gradebook. When your students turn in an assignment, Canvas makes a column in your gradebook for that assignment, and you can just score the assignment. It doesn't have to have a rubric or an outcome. You can just say, hey, great, thanks for turning it in. You got a 3 out of 5, and here's your feedback. And so then Canvas will record that score in the gradebook, that picture on the left-hand side. But if you want to take it to a next step further and say, hey, this assignment is really important to me. I really want to have an outcome or a target assigned to this assignment. We've been working on introduction to our essay for a couple of days. Now I want to assess them. And so now the beauty of that is it's still an assignment. It still submits to the Canvas gradebook, but now I want evidence of how my students are doing against that target. And that's what that learning mastery is. And I think, Rayanne, you had mentioned, I don't see learning mastery. In some cases, your Canvas admin might have to actually press that button, allow for mastery gradebook to be viewable. In our district, it is totally viewable. And so it's something that if you want to reach out to your school district, you can. In order to find it, you'll see the picture on the left-hand side where if you are in your Canvas gradebook, you can click on gradebook. The drop-down menu will show you, and then that will allow you to look at the learning mastery. I just got logged out. So sorry, dude.
Bottom.
What happened
corner.
Was
bottom left-hand corner.
Yeah, bottom left-hand corner. So hopefully that answers your question. And Sophia, basically it's 2 gradebooks: assignment view, scores for the assignment, and I can look at how I'm doing its outcomes. They are working in conjunction because it's the same assignment. It's just that I might want to value or measure that student differently, either a point value for just the assignment or for the outcome. And you can switch back and forth anytime you want to. Okay, so real quickly, as far as making Canvas outcomes, and this is kind of like the dirt of this process, okay? In our school district, we don't have yet the targets loaded in Canvas for every single teacher, okay? So I say that yet because I'll tell you why. However, there's a few ways you can do it. You can manually just type them in, copy and paste, and we'll show you what that looks like briefly. You can use a CSV file, which is basically, you've got your outcomes in a big spreadsheet and you can import them in, or you can use the magic of what's called API, which is what we're doing in our district. And we're going ahead and we're simply going to take our targets from Synergy and we're going to basically import them into every single course for every secondary teacher in the district. So if you teach Chemistry 1, your targets from Synergy will be automatically loaded in your Chemistry 1 Canvas course. But that process has taken us for a long time to do. And the whole point is it's 6 slots. So if you're like, ooh, Chris, we aren't even there yet. how do I get started? You can literally just click on outcomes and you can literally just get started with outcomes. And I don't want to like spend a ton of time on the process on how, because unfortunately I don't have a ton of time to do that. But if I wanted to create an outcome in Canvas, on the left-hand side, click outcomes, and I can literally just go ahead and hit add an outcome. And this is the name of the target. So this is the target language. And then this might be the description for the target, spelled it wrong. And then down below, this is the criteria that I'm going to use. Are we scoring it on a 4, 3, 2, 1? Am I IB? Do I use a 1 to 8 scale? So this is where you as a classroom teacher can manually go ahead and add them. However, I want to say, where's my slide? There's a big warning to that. Because talk to your school district. If your district is working towards making a consistent approach, ask them first, hey, you know, so-and-so, I really like to do these outcomes. Do we have a way for our district to put them in? If the answer is no, then as a classroom teacher, I feel really comfortable clicking on outcomes on the left-hand side and hitting add an outcome and copying and pasting it from maybe my targets of where they exist. And in our district, we've been using Teacher Source. Other districts house their targets in somewhere else, and you can literally just spend your time copying and pasting.
And I've done that.
Yeah, and we've done, and that's why we're saying
a long time,
the journey of this is not a simple journey, but that's basically where you can start as a classroom teacher. So you can do it. The other way is, and I'm not in presentation mode on purpose, but now the other way is I can do a CSV. And so both Rick and I have been working on this. This is the CSV I have. Rick's got one that he's been doing. And so this was my take on, I want to load in all of the elementary targets into Canvas for every single teacher. And so I was going to have to create a spreadsheet. It looks a little bit frustrating because you're like, oh my gosh, Chris, what's going on? And that's something that we are happy to help you with. But what's really important is basically the title. What is the name of the target? The description. And then the big important component is this whole column right here. It's called the vendor GUI. And that basically means each target has a very unique code so that it can't be reused and changed later on. The goal is I'm going to be using this target for a while. If the target gets expired, then I have to go ahead and create a new one. So anyways, this process we've done through his Rick has done his own process for his own course. This is how he started. I mean, manually first, then he went into doing his own spreadsheet. And then this is our take. We were loading them up for the entire district for all grade levels. And I have them color coded because this color tells me it's the group. And this color tells me it's a different group. And so that's kind of the reasons why we're doing this. So there are some videos, there are some help, but I'm gonna tell you right now, a lot of this has been, right, a labor of love.
Yeah, for sure. And we had somebody, they were asking like, yeah, oh, could we have these targets? I mean, I don't think we're not trying to like not share, but I think they're targets that are specific to Beaverton schools.
Yeah.
They were written by, you know, the teachers that got together to kind of like analyze, you know.
Yeah, so our targets, when I say synergy, it's because they're the Beaverton School District targets that are in synergy. If you're in a district that uses synergy, you might have common core standards, or you might have your own standards that are in synergy. And so that's what we mean by the Rick's not trying to be mean. Our targets just are not going to fit for somebody else, but the process is going to be the same for that. And yes, we can give the template for sure, 100%, we can do that. So then finally, the last process, just real briefly want to talk about it. Again, this is not, I don't want to go heavy deep into how we're going to do this, but the last process is basically using API. It sounds scary. It kind of, I don't think it is scary, but it's basically using some magic from the ability to basically use application protocol. So we are taking our targets from Synergy and we're going to push them into every course. So in the fall, if you're a Beaverton School District teacher, you will open up your Canvas course and you should see the targets from Synergy that you teach in your course. And that's our goal. Now, that's not to say we don't have a few hiccups along the way. There's a few little tiny things we're still trying to figure out. If you change the targets in Synergy, the goal is they get reflected and changed. So if you change the language or capitalize something, that push will come through to Canvas. A teacher won't have to do that on their own. So then the goal is, we've given you your outcomes. All you have left to do now as a classroom teacher is create your assignments and attach an outcome to those assignments if you want to. And again, once you have those targets in Canvas outcomes, you can go ahead and find those outcomes and how do you and basically attach those. So right,
I'm working on getting my template in the chat there. So but yeah, the one disadvantage is that like all of the standards are going to be in there, correct?
No, actually, you're talking about for teachers in general.
Yeah.
No,
yeah, is it going to be course specific, or is
it'll
it
be
like,
course
are we going to have to
specifics.
go through the?
It will be
Oh,
course
wow.
specific. In other words, this is what it's going to look
cool.
like. So what I'm showing to you right now is our beta. So every teacher could potentially get into the beta version in Canvas in our district if they wanted to, but this is the beta version. And so basically what it's saying is, if I'm a high school teacher, here are all the courses that are in the high school that a teacher could bring in. However, if I teach math, algebra 2, when I open up my algebra 2 Canvas course in the fall, these targets will be there, and that's all I'm going to see. I could choose to go get a few more if I want to. Targets, outcomes, but they won't have to. So the goal is that we won't have to have teachers go and do all the time spending to do that. So Sophia, you're asking good questions. The template, I will share with you. I want you to know that as far as the template is concerned, this right here, I'm going to copy this link here. And then Rick, I don't know if you don't have a copy of it, Rick, I can make a copy of this template and just empty it out. But the challenge with this template that I have is I've set it up so that we have different group levels. So Rick, you threw yours in?
Yeah, I just threw it in.
Thank you. Yeah. I love outcomes. I love the fact that we do it, but it's a little bit challenging for teachers to kind of go, well, wait a second, how do I get them into my course? And like we mentioned at the very beginning, if you want to just at the very beginning, go into just simply clicking outcomes and then add an outcome, you can go ahead and add that outcome. And we just copied and pasted it. I mean, if I go to my spreadsheet, this is the target. So this is the target right here. And then I can copy and paste that and put that into my outcome. And I can put it in description if I want to. So there's ways you can do that as a classroom teacher. We are working towards doing this as a district so that teachers won't have to do this as individuals themselves. So I want to pause.
I will say that it does make your life a lot easier.
Yeah, and I don't want to get into it, but Rick he's doing his session a little bit later, and he's going to talk about how to use those outcomes in SpeedGrader and how to make your life as a classroom teacher more efficient, more productive and stuff. So let's pause. Feel free to unmute. Like I said, this is only a 30-minute session. We're just talking about those outcomes. And
we are at 30 minutes actually, just so.
Yeah. So did teachers use Beaverton have a rubric library? We don't have a district-wide rubric library, but teachers, if they wanted to create the rubric, they could go ahead and share it. I want to tell you that this was interesting. The difference between, this is where I think the language gets a little bit fun. There's a difference between outcomes and a rubric, but technically you can make a rubric with outcomes. And so what that simply means is in Canvas, if I just wanted to just click on rubrics on the left-hand side, I can just hit add a rubric. You're like, wait a second, Chris, that looks really familiar. It does. But the big difference is, I don't know if you remember the old days, what's it called? Rubistar. Remember the old days when we'd use this website and you'd go here to Rubistar and you'd create a rubric? It was, I would consider it a task-specific rubric, like you're going to turn in an essay and I'm going to look for spelling and grammar and grading, and you would make a rubric. Lots of spelling mistakes, no spelling mistakes, lots of grammar mistakes. And so that's the rubric you create as a classroom teacher. That was not necessarily standards-based, but it was a rubric to tell your students how you were assessing them. And that's totally fair. So in Canvas, you can still create a rubric. In our district, our teachers in elementary are using Lucy Calkins. And so that's the writing rubrics or the reading rubrics that curriculum has given to our teachers. And they want some of those in Canvas this year, and we can do that. But you can also just create your own rubric based off of just what you want to score them on. The difference between a rubric and an outcome is I can actually make an outcome, a standard, and then turn that into a rubric by stacking 2 or more outcomes together. So it gets a little bit complex, I think, and that's one of the reasons why I think Canvas is the terminology between what districts use and what we use. So it's, you need that clarification between what's a rubric, Chris, what's the difference between a rubric and an outcome. So, all right, I think we're almost out of time, and I apologize because I have to go to this other thing. So we can come back to the 11 o'clock session. But Sophia, feel free to unmute, or if anybody else wants to unmute. If you want to take off and go to the other session so you're not missing out, I will not be hurt. It's totally fine. And matter of fact, we'll stop recording right now.